Shalom, Israel. So we realized, ooh, my laptop all loud. Shalom, Israel. So we realized, sometimes the intro gets to run in a little bit. So what we decided to do, while we doing our little prepping, we let y'all sit there and watch us behind the scenes as we prepping. Why not, y'all know what it is. Sound Doctrine. It's Friday night. We got started a little late. We're going to blame our head apostle, Ashna Pash. Just put it on him. Northern Kingdom folks be going over time and stuff with they teaching. You know how that go. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do one thing. Let me do this real quick. And then we good to go. Nope, that's the wrong one. Hold on. Where you at? Boom. Boom. Here it is. Okay. All right. My bad, family. So, let's get into it. Shabbat Shalom. You know what we going to go to first. We got my first two scriptures. We going to bust him down real quick. This is Sound Doctrine with Brother Darash and my brother Yahweh. All right, Doc. And tonight, we talking about the new moon. How to keep it and when to keep it. Now, here's the thing. There's a lot of, what's the word? There's a lot of, that's the word, controversy on, or even opinions on when it actually, begins. Some people say it's when it's dark. Some people say it's first light, the sliver, the crescent. Some people say it's a full moon. We're going to try to stick to the facts. We're going to try to stick to the information. Sometimes I like to mess around and poke fun, but I'll be nice tonight. I want brothers and sisters to really look at what the scriptures say. I want brothers and sisters to look at what the information says and really take heed and take into consideration what it is that we're doing. A lot of times we follow our leaders, which is not a problem, but can be a problem when we don't do our due diligence, when we don't go and do the research ourselves or question the research that was given unto us, especially if we find conflicting research or conflicting evidence or references. We can't be so worried and we can't be so scared that we're not asking questions. The scriptures tell you to study to show yourself approved. The scriptures tell you to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. You can't ride nobody's coattail into the kingdom. And you can't make the argument of, well, such and such told me that this is how we were supposed to be doing it. You were supposed to study to show yourself approved. If that was something that if you were really serious about this walk, that's something that you would have really taken the time and committed yourself to do, right? So we've taken the time to compile the information, compile the references, to talk about the new moon, when the new moon starts, and also what it represents. I've asked a number of people, and I've come to find out that a lot of people don't really know what the new moon is. Why do we celebrate it? And it's not really that deep. It's not that difficult, but I've realized that a lot of people have not taken the time to look into it. So I want us to get as clean and understanding as we can tonight as it pertains to the new moon. So before we get my first two, let's go to Acts. I want to go to Acts 5 and 29. I'm going to end up adding that to the repertoire. Acts 5 and 29.
This is the book of Acts, chapter 5, and verse 29. Then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than men.
We ought to obey God rather than men. That's very important because we have to take into consideration sometimes we're rocking with what other brothers are saying or whatever the case is, and we haven't done our own research. We haven't seen what the scriptures say. We haven't sat down and rightly divided the word of truth. We haven't gone through the information to see what our forefathers were actually doing. We just, well, that's what they said, so that's what we're doing. That's a dangerous game you play. So the scripture said we ought to obey God rather than men. Let's go to Proverbs. Let's hit that. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 2.
This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 4 and verse 2. For I give you good doctrine, forsake ye not my law.
For I give you good doctrine, don't forsake the law. The doctrine is the law. And we have to do our best to obey the law to the best of our ability. Some of us is just like, well, we in captivity. We just, we rehearsing it. Yeah, but the purpose of rehearsal is to perfect it, not to say that, yeah, we just doing it. That's the goal is not mediocrity. The goal is not bare minimum. The goal is not to do as little as possible. The goal is to perfect it and do it in excellency and do it heartily. And in order to do that, you got to do the research to figure it out. So the good doctrine, the law, a part of the law is what we call the new moon. We'll get into it, but essentially it's the first day of each of our months, and it's also a Sabbath. So we're going to get into the scriptures and we're going to break that down, but let's get that last one.
This is the book of 2 Timothy, chapter 4 and verse 3. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears, and they shall turn their ears from the truth. And shall be turned unto fables.
And so we were going to run into a situation. Now, this lesson is a little different. I'm not going to say individuals are being turned to fables, but we do have a situation where individuals are having itching ears and going to various teachers instead of trying to figure out the information for themselves, researching for themselves. So y'all know them is my opening scriptures. I think we're going to have to add Acts 5 and 29 because that's like the foundation of this class, obeying the Most High God and not just going with the flow. You feel me? So let's jump into it. What is the new moon? Why do we keep the new moon? What does the new moon represent? Right? Let's go to the book of Numbers. We're going to open up with Numbers. Where's that joint at? Here it is. Numbers. All right, so this chapter 10, and I want verse 10.
This is the book of Numbers, chapter 10 and verse 10. Also, in the day of your gladness.
In the day of your gladness, come on.
And in your solemn days.
And in all of your solemn days, come on.
And in the beginnings of your months.
And in the what?
In the beginnings of your months.
Shall what?
Ye shall blow with the trumpets over your burnt offerings.
Read.
And over the sacrifices of your peace offerings.
Right, read.
That they may be to you for a memorial before your God.
Right, so the purpose for us even going here is to understand what a new moon is. The new moon is the first day of the month, also known as the beginning of your months. And we're going to see through a couple of other scriptures, this was something that we were ordained to do even in the prophets, right? So the new moon signifies that we are now in a new month, which I'm not going to get into it now. I may do the lesson next week, maybe in 2 weeks, I don't know. But that even shows you that a day begins the new 24-hour period, because people will say, well, day literally means daytime. So I'm going to make a distinction. You have daytime, and then you have a day, which is a quote-unquote approximate 24-hour period. An approximate 24-hour period begins at sundown because that's when you realize what day of the month we're even on. So in the beginning of your months, on your new moon, right, is when you're supposed to make these sacrifices. You'll also see the reason why is because it's a feast. It's a Sabbath, right? And we'll go into the scriptures and show that as well. So I know that was a sidebar, but I did want to say that also shows you how a day or quote unquote 24-hour period begins once the sun sets, because you can't know what day you're on unless you're looking at the moon phase. The moon phase tells you what day we're on. So you only find that out when the sun goes down. So we know we're in a new day. We've gone to the third day or the fourth day or the fifth day when you see the moon. That's beside the point, but that was something that just kind of like in the spirit hit me. What was that, Numbers 10? Let's go to Ezekiel. Actually, I want to double up on that. I'm sorry. I want to go to 1 Samuel. God, 1 Samuel 20 or I think it's 21. Salakia, I do want to double up on that first. So in the beginning of your months, Numbers 10 and 10 shows us that the new moon is the beginning of our months. But let's double down and make sure that we have, 2 or 3 witnesses, right? 1 Samuel chapter 20. Is it verse 20 and 24? Let me see. 1 Samuel 20 and 20. Yeah, let's start at 20. Actually, let's start at 25.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 20 and verse 25.
Salakia, let's drop down to... Nope, never mind. Yeah, we're good right there. Let's go.
And the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something had befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry, 24. We did need to start at 24. That's on me.
Verse 24. This is the book of 1 Samuel chapter 20 and verse 24. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat.
So now it's the new moon. Remember that. It is the new moon right now. David is hiding. The king was trying to figure out where he was at, but he didn't make a big deal out of it. He said maybe he's unclean, so he couldn't partake of the feast, right? Go ahead.
Verse 25. And the king sat upon a seat, as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something hath befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean.
Right.
Verse 27. And it came to pass on the morrow.
Wait. Slow it down. So it came to pass on the morrow, meaning the next day at even, what happened?
Which was the second day of the month.
Which was the what?
The second day of the month.
So Numbers 10 and verse 10 said that in the beginning of your months, you blow up the trumpet and burn your sacrifices, right? We're supposed to have a feast. We say that the new moon is the first day of the month. It is the beginning of your months. We see here in 1 Samuel, the new moon came in, and then the next day, which was what?
Which was the second day of the month.
The second day of the month, read.
That David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, Wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meat, neither yesterday nor today? And Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked leave for me to go to Bethlehem.
So we see here that as you continue to read the story, this is where Saul was trying to kill David. But as we see here, oh snap, what happened? As we see here, the new moon came in. The very next day was the second day of the month. So we see that the new moon is the beginning of the months. It is the first day of the month. That's very important to know, because a lot of times, at least I've asked the question to a number of individuals, why do we celebrate the new moon? Because it's a Sabbath. Yeah, but why do we what does it represent? And a lot of people, they try to make it deeper than what it is. It's real simple. We bringing in a new month, and we feasting when the new month is coming in. And each month, each lunar cycle, we're getting closer to, whether it's trumpets or tabernacles we're getting closer to major feast days as well. That's all that it is. And every time a new month comes in, that first day is what we call a Sabbath. That's it. It's really not that deep. That's literally what it is. Now let's go to I want to go to Amos first. Let's go to Amos first. Because there are some congregations out there that do not acknowledge or observe the new moon as a Sabbath, right? And the reason being is because it's not one of the feast days that are in Leviticus 23 and Amos 8. Because it's not in the I think it's the 7 feasts that are in Leviticus 23. And to a degree, I can understand that, because some people don't celebrate Hanukkah. Some people don't celebrate Purim. Some people don't celebrate Nicanor. But think about this. look at the history, right? You look at the history of our forefathers. Why would you not want to take every possible chance that you have to worship the Most High and do so? The new moon is another one. The Lord has allowed another lunation cycle to come through, another new month. We're getting closer to whether it's the middle of the year, whether it's the 7th month of the year where we got tabernacles, atonement, trumpets, whether it's the Passover, right? The Lord has set things up for us all throughout the year. I'm celebrating every single chance that I get. Now, some brothers don't feel that way. And it's no shade to the brothers, but we're going to see in the scriptures, even our forefathers who were, I say this all the time, the prophets, the wise men, the leaders at that time were much more closer and understand. First of all, they understood Hebrew. They understood the Hebraic culture. We just trying to figure it out. And they were closer to the Most High in that time. So there's certain things that if they doing it, the righteous men are doing it, I'm rocking with it, right? Let's go to Amos chapter 8. I think it's verse 5. Read verse 5.
This is the book of Amos, chapter 8 and verse 5, saying, when will the new moon be gone?
Start at verse 4.
Verse 4, hear this, O ye that swallow up the needy, even to make the poor of the land to fail, saying, when will the new moon be gone?
So this talking about Amos is reaching out and speaking to the wicked. He said, listen here, you wicked mother effers. He said, listen here. This is what y'all on right now. Read.
Saying, when will the new moon be gone?
This is what y'all focus on. When is the new moon going to be over? Go ahead.
That we may sell corn.
So we can start doing business transactions again. Now, why is that important? Watch this.
And the Sabbath.
And the what?
And the Sabbath.
Come on.
That we may set forth wheat.
So their thing was, well, when is this new moon going to be over so we can go back to doing our business, man? We over this. Like, we trying to get back to what we was doing. Right? But that there shows you that in this particular time, in the time of Amos the prophet, the new moon was supposed to be a Sabbath. And if Amos understood it like that, then that's how I understand it. So just, some perspective for individuals who may feel a way about it. Some perspective for individuals who may say we don't observe it, we don't care for it, whatever the case is. Our forefathers did it. Maybe it's something you want to look into. Maybe you want to, see what the process was when they were looking into it. Because at the end of the day, we want to try our best to get as close to the culture as possible and follow our forefathers as closely as possible. That's what we should be striving to do. You feel me? So now let's go to Isaiah 66 first. Let's go to Isaiah 66 first. And then we'll go to the Ezekiel one. You can read it when you got it. I'm sorry, Isaiah 66 and 23.
This is the book of Isaiah 66 in chapter 23. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another,
come on,
shall all flesh come to worship before me.
Every new moon, I'm sorry, this is getting into what it is that we're supposed to be doing, right? Every new moon and every Sabbath, what happens?
And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me,
right,
saith the Lord.
So we're supposed to come together. What does that mean? That means the new moon is a holy gathering. On the new moon, we're supposed to be pulling up to the Most High, worshiping, treating it as a Sabbath, as we've seen in Amos, blowing up a trumpet, burning sacrifices. It's a day of gladness. It's a feast day. The new moon's a feast day. Go to Ezekiel. So again, I'm looking at it and I'm like, for the people that don't celebrate it, it's like, the Most High gave it to us. Why not celebrate it? What is that? Ezekiel. I'm drawing a blank right now. Ezekiel chapter 46. Ezekiel 46 and verse 3.
This is the book of Ezekiel chapter 46 and verse 3. Likewise, the people of the land shall worship at the door of this gate before the Lord in the Sabbaths and in the new moons.
Read.
And the burnt offering that the prince shall offer unto the Lord in the Sabbath day shall be 6 lambs without blemish, and a ram without blemish.
Right. So drop down to verse 6.
And in the day of the new moon it shall be a young bullock without blemish, and 6 lambs and a ram. They shall be without blemish.
So again, in the beginning of our months, also known as the new moon, also known as the first day of the month, also known as a Sabbath, we are supposed to come together and we're supposed to give sacrifice to the Lord, and we're supposed to feast. It's a feast. So the new moon is not that deep of a breakdown, right? The new moon is literally that. It is the beginning of your months, also known as the first day of the month. It's number 1. Number 2, it is a Sabbath. Number 3, it is a holy gathering. We're supposed to come together and gather. Now, the only thing, because we get this question a lot, are you allowed to cook on the new moon? The only feast day where it is stipulated you are not permitted to cook is the 7-day Sabbath. That is the only one. So when people ask us that, as long as your new moon doesn't fall on your 7-day Sabbath, Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, you can cook. Because again, Tabernacles, it doesn't say that you can't cook on the 1st or the 8th day. Passover, of course you got to make the lamb. So that first day you have to cook. The 7th day it doesn't say, or the 7th day at even, it doesn't say that you can't can't cook. The 1st and 8th day of dedication, it doesn't say that you can't cook, but the 7-day Sabbath specifies that specifically. So the 7-day Sabbath is the only Sabbath in the scriptures that it has been specified that there is no cooking. But for the new moon, it's the same stipulations: no buying, no selling, no working, no bearing any burdens. All the stipulations of the Sabbath, save cooking, it's the exact same thing, right? So that is what the new moon is. That is when we keep the new moon. Now the question is, so we know it's the first day of the month. What is considered to be the first day of the month? Is it the full moon? Is it the crescent moon? Is it the dark moon? There's a lot of speculation around all 3 of them. I want to do something real quick. Go to Proverbs 25 and verse 2. Proverbs 25 and 2.
This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 25 and verse 2. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter. It
is the glory of God to conceal a thing, and the honor of the king will search it out. Why? What is that? What is that saying? The Lord is going to conceal things and make you go look for it. If you really want to know, you're going to go look for it. Why does that matter? What does that have to do with this lesson, right? When you read the Bible, nowhere in the Bible does it tell you what the new moon looks like. I'll say it again. Nowhere in the Bible does it tell you what the new moon looks like. Why is that? Why does that matter? Because this is why we're in the predicament that we're in now. Some people say it's this, some people say it's that, some people say it's that. You can't look through anywhere in the Bible. I'll tell you the scriptures the new moon look like. No, you can't find that. Anytime you see the word new moon, matter of fact, it says 10 results. 1 Samuel 20 and 5, David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon. That's the first one. Number 2, 1 Samuel 20 and 18. Tomorrow is the new moon, and thou shalt be missed, blah, blah, blah. 1 Samuel 20 and 24, when the new moon was come. 2 Kings 4 and 23. It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath, and she said, it shall be well. Psalm 81 and 3, blow up the trumpet in the new moon. Now, we're going to talk about this scripture too. In the time appointed on our solemn feast day, Ezekiel 66, and it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, we just read that one, Ezekiel 46 and 1 through 6, talks about the new moon, doesn't tell you what it looks like. Amos 8:5 talks about the new moon, doesn't tell you what it looks like. And Colossians 2:16 says something about the new moon, but doesn't tell you what the phase of the new moon is and what it looks like. This is very important to understand, because people will sit there and tell you, "I'll show you the scripture." The scriptures show you emphatically that the new moon is the dark moon. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And as a matter of fact, and I hope the brother doesn't take any offense to this, it kind of just fell in place the way that it did. I had a conversation with a brother just the other day, and I was reaching out to him because I know he's a well-studied individual. And I hadn't thought to reach out to him in times past about whether or not he had research on what the new moon looks like. He expressed to me, I guess there's some key points, and he said he would get the information. He said I believe he said he had some references, and I'm waiting for him to send it over to me. But he made a really what I would call respectable claim. Right? We were having a short conversation, and I asked him about the new moon, and he said, "Look, the crescent moon is plausible. So that's why you never hear me argue about it, or hear me argue on it, or hear me, speak against it when brothers are teaching the crescent moon." He said, and even, our forefathers like Philo say what they say about it. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because there are brothers out there that are saying, brothers who teach that are emphatically wrong. The crescent is wrong. You bugged out. You going off, yada, yada, yada. This particular brother, and I've known him for a couple of years, and I've appreciated watching his growth. But one thing he's always had was he's always had that desire to study. And this is a brother in Israel that a lot of people look to as one of those scholars, one of those individuals that I'm tuning into their class to get an understanding. I'm tuning in today classes to get that information. I'm going to watch they debate. So if this brother, a well-respected brother, is saying this, then who are you as individuals that ain't even done the due diligence to sit there and say brothers is bugged out for teaching that? We got a brother that I personally feel like is an individual that does his due diligence, and out of his mouth he said it's plausible. It's definitely plausible. I could see the crescent moon being the new moon. That's why you'll never hear me say anything about brothers that teach it. Hey, that's good enough for me, because a lot of the people that talk about it ain't never done the research, right? But we're going to get into the information and the evidence, right? And we're going to see, because I have yet to find it, and I hope somebody send it over to me. I'm hoping somebody gets me, and not just that, brother, but I've reached out to a few different people. I'm asking, just for the evidence of a dark moon, right? So we're going to look at the evidence. We're going to see the information and see what it says, right? So let's go to Deuteronomy 32. So the Bible does not tell you what the new moon looks like. It is your job to go and do your due diligence to figure it out. Deuteronomy 32:7.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32 and verse 7. Remember the days of old.
Remember your history. Come on.
Consider the years of many generations.
Remember your history. Look into your history. Bring it back into remembrance what the forefathers was doing. Come on.
Ask thy father.
Ask your forefathers. Come on.
And he will show thee.
And he's going to show you. Come on.
Thy elders, and they will tell thee.
Come on.
When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance.
So it goes into talking about when the Most High started dividing the nations and so on and so forth. But the point that I want to hold to right now, if you want to figure something out, ask your forefathers. Look into your history. They'll let you know. Scriptures tell you that. Job 8:8 says the same thing. Inquire, I pray thee, of the former age. Look into your history so you can figure it out, right? So when we talk about the new moon, We don't see in the Bible verbatim what it looks like. But what we can do is we can look and see what our forefathers were doing. We can inquire of the former age. We can ask our fathers, right? Let's I don't know why they keep popping up. Let's go to, let me double check something before we go to the PowerPoint. Okay. Let's go to the PowerPoint. We're going to touch on a full moon, crescent moon, or dark moon. God, real quick, let me pull this up before I go into it. Let me see. I want to get the actual definition. Get the actual whatchamacallit. There we go. There we go. Okay. So we'll start here. The new moon can't be a full moon. I'll say it again. The new moon cannot be the full moon. This is no shade, no disrespect to any brothers, but all the precepts that you use never says that the full moon is the new moon. You try to piece these things together and then say, see, so the full moon is the new moon. But even our forefathers and the history of our forefathers show you that that just can't be true. The Bible shows you that that can't be true, respectfully. This is from Chabad.org. And what Chabad is, let me see, where's the about, whatchamacallit. Here it is. Chabad is a flagship website for the Chabad Lubavitch Hasidic movement. It was one of the first Jewish internet sites and the first and largest virtual congregation. It provides daily, date-specific information relevant to each day from the history of the Jews. So if you look into a lot of the information that a lot of brothers get when it comes to certain aspects of our history, they get it off Chabad because they have a lot of that information. Though they are the Revelation 2:9s, the Ish, whatever you want to call them, they have a lot of that history and a lot of that information, right? Even a lot of people will look at the information and be like, see, but those are Jews, those are Jewish. Yeah, but they call Josephus Jewish, and a lot of people use his information. They call Philo Jewish, and a lot of people still use that information. So we gotta be honest with the information and honest with the history and even honest with the text, right? So according to Chabad, it says there is indeed deep astrological significance to the date of the Passover. We celebrate the festival of freedom on the 15th of the quote-unquote Jewish month of Nisan, also known as Abib, the night the Israelites were freed from Egypt. Watch this. This is the full moon of the month of Aries, the ram. Now, sidebar, me and the brother Yathawan was having a conversation the other day, and he was saying, is there any other information that shows that, we were keeping the feast specifically in Aries? I found like 4 other sources, just kind of like a sidebar. So when we get back to the lesson of calculating feast days, we'll talk about that too. If your Passover does not fall in the month of Aries, when the sun is in Aries, then you're in the wrong month. And Lord willing, next time we do that lesson, we'll get into it. I'll show brothers and sisters. But nonetheless, the new moon cannot be the full moon because the full moon is the 15th day of the month. The Passover fell on the full moon. Watch this, though. Go to the next slide. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, right? Or excuse me, Jewish Exponent. Here it is. Let me see if it's just the highlighted part. I think it's just the highlighted part that I want to deal with. Yeah. These holidays, let's start at the top. The moon thus plays a central role in the Jewish calendar. First, every month begins with a new moon. Second, a number of major and semi-major holidays take place at the full moon, right? And it says, which corresponds to the 15th day of the Jewish month. So I'll read it again. This is from Jewish Exponent. Second, a number of major and semi-major holidays take place at the full moon. A number of feasts take place on the full moon, which corresponds, which means which is on the 15th day of the month. So the full moon can't be the first day of the month and the 15th day of the month. That is impossible. Now, these holidays include Passover, Sukkot, which is Feast of Tabernacles, 2 of the 3 pilgrimage festivals, which is Passover and Tabernacles. Then Purim and even the second Passover. And then they have this traditional festival day that they started doing, which is Tu B'Shavat, which is the New Year of the trees. I think that's in like either the 7th or the 8th month. But that's their own traditional day. But the Passover, second Passover, Purim, and Tabernacles, all of those start on the 15th day. And in times past, in the ancient time of the Jews, in our history, those days corresponded or were on a full moon. So how can the full moon be the new moon if we see that the full moon was on, the Passover was on the full moon, Tabernacles was on the full moon, second Passover was on the full moon, Purim is on the full moon. None of those are the first day of the month, ever. So we know just through the history, and I'm about to show you in the scriptures, how the full moon cannot be the new moon. And again, it's no shade and no disrespect to the brothers. I just pray that, brothers look into the information and see. Because at the end of the day, all we're trying to do right now is figure it out, right? All we can do is go on what we see in the scriptures and what we've seen with our forefathers. And that's my biggest thing. Does what our forefathers, what they were doing, does it line up with the scriptures? And if it does, I'm going to rock with it. Now, let's go to the book of Psalms 81 and 3. We're going to read verse 3 and we're going to read down to 7. You can go to the next slide, Malachi.
This is
real quick before you read it. These are the 3 things we want to focus on in this scripture. Time of the new moon, in the new moon, time appointed, and solemn feast days. So you can leave it on the PowerPoint because we're going to go right to the next slide after he reads this. Go ahead.
This is the book of Psalm, chapter 81 and verse 3. Blow up the trumpet in the new moon.
Blow up the trumpet in the new moon.
In the time appointed.
In the time appointed.
On our solemn feast day.
On our solemn feast day. Blow up the trumpet in the new moon. That's point 1. In the time appointed. That's point 2. Solemn feast day. That's point 3. This is very important to understand. We're going to show you why. Next slide. The new moon. Chodesh is why people call it Rosh Chodesh or Rosh Chodash. It is the new moon or the new month or monthly. The first day of the month, it can also mean that, or the lunar month. The new moon by implication a month, monthly or new moon, right? So it's saying one of 2 things. Blow up the trumpet in the new month or blow up the trumpet specifically on the new moon. Sounds the same, right? Let's continue on so you can see that it's not exactly the same. The time appointed. Next slide. The next slide. Time appointed. Chesah. Chesah. That word literally means full moon. Properly, the fullness or the full moon, i.e., or for example, it's festivals. That's the time appointed. So it says, blow up the trumpet in the new moon or the new month, one of the 2, on the full moon. See, some people will look at that and say, see, the new moon is the full moon because it said blow up the trumpet on the new moon on the full moon. Sounds good, right? But this is the kicker. Our solemn feast day. Next slide. Our solemn feast day. This is the important part. Solemn feast day refers to Chag. Chag is a festival feast, festival gathering or pilgrim feast. That's very important. A pilgrim feast. Feast, festival, sacrifice. A festival or a victim thereof, talking about a sacrifice. Solemn, feast day, sacrifice, solemnity. Now, if you look up this word chag, everywhere in the Bible, it only refers to 3 feast days. Can you guess which one of those are? The 3 high holy days. What are those? Passover. Tabernacles. Nope. Pentecost. So it said, blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time appointed. So blow up the trumpet in the new moon, on the full moon, on one of our solemn 3 holy days, the top 3 pilgrim holy days. The new moon is not a Chag feast day. The new moon is not a pilgrimage feast day. So what is this talking about? I'm going to give you what the translation should have said, or what the translation would have been more clean had it said it this way. Blow up the trumpet in the new month, on the full moon, on our pilgrim fest, or on our solemn pilgrim festival, meaning when we have to travel back to Jerusalem, our solemn high holy day. Blow up the trumpet in the new month, on the full moon, on our solemn high holy day. Because nowhere, if you look in the Bible, look up this word chag right here. You can pull it up on Blue Letter Bible, and it'll give you all of the times in which it was used. And every single time it was used, it was referring to the Passover, the Feast of Tabernacles, or first fruits. That's it. It's never referred to as a 7-day Sabbath, never referred to in dedication, never referred to in trumpets. None of those, never the new moon. It's those 3 high holy days. So blow up the trumpet in the new month. Watch this. Go to Deuteronomy 16:1. I'm going to show you where it's literally corresponding. Blow up the trumpet in the new month, on the full moon, on our solemn high holy day, where we pilgrim back to Jerusalem. Deuteronomy 16:1, real quick. No, I'm sorry. Is that what it is? No, that's not what I want. I want, it's in Exodus, my bad. Exodus chapter, I'll tell you right now. I think it's Exodus 12. Exodus chapter 12. Oh, it is verse 1. Yep, my bad. 1 and 2. Exodus.
This is the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months.
This month shall be what?
The beginning of months.
So when you say the new month, so it says, blow up the trumpet in the new month, on the full moon. Why is it the new month? Because it's the beginning of the months of that year, Abib. Now, we didn't read it yet. People are going to be like, it didn't say that it was Passover. I'm going to show you that it's talking about Passover. We're going to go back to Psalm 81, and I'm going to show you that it's talking about the Passover. So blow up the trumpet in the new month, the beginning of your months, on the full moon. So the full moon of the beginning of your months, because that's the first month out of all 12 of them. Blow up the trumpet in that new month, that first month of the year, on the full moon, on this high holy gathering. Watch this. Go back to Psalm 81. Go back to Psalm 81. You can leave it on us for now. We'll get back to the PowerPoint.
This is the book of Psalm 81,
verse 3.
Verse 3. Blow up the trumpet in the new moon.
In the new month.
In the time appointed.
In the full moon.
On our solemn feast day.
On this high holy feast day where we have to make the pilgrimage. Come on.
For this was a statute for Israel and a law of the God of Jacob.
So this was a law that was set in place. Come on.
This he ordained in Joseph for a testimony.
He ordained it in Joseph in Egypt for a testimony. Come on.
When he went out through the land of Egypt, where I heard a language that I understood not.
When an individual heard a language that he understood not, come on.
I removed his shoulder from the burden.
There was only one time in history when we're talking about feast days where our shoulders, our hands, our work, or we were removed from the burden, right? Read.
His hands were delivered from pots.
Our hands were delivered from pots, from being servants. Come on.
thou callest in trouble.
We called in trouble. Well, actually, there's a few feast days, so I won't say that. But there was one main feast day where we cried out for trouble. Come on.
And I delivered thee.
And we got delivered. Come on.
I answered thee in the secret place of thunder.
When were we answered in the secret place of thunder? In the wilderness. In the wilderness when Moses had led us out. But watch this. Continue on.
I proved thee at the waters of Meribah.
When were we proven at the waters of Meribah? In the wilderness. Right. So it said, blow up the trumpets in the new moon, in the time appointed, on our solemn feast day. What feast day is it talking about? What feast day was our shoulder removed from the burden? What feast day was it that we cried out to the Lord and he delivered us? What feast day was it that after that feast happened that the Lord answered us in the thunder? The Lord, what did it say? Proved us at Meribah. What was that? Passover. Exactly. Blow up the trumpet in the new month, the beginning of your months, on the full moon during this high holy day known as the Passover. Now, mind you, didn't we just read on Chabad and on the other website? It said that the full moon, also which corresponds with the 15th day, is the Passover. Then the Bible just told you the same thing. The full moon is the Passover. How could the full moon be the new moon? I want to ask y'all, is that making sense? Was that confusing? Was that confusing? No, it was pretty clear. So the full moon can't be the new moon. Again, it's no shade, it's no disrespect. I just want, and for those online, if y'all can tell me too. Did that make sense? Was that clear? Because we gotta deal with the information. We have to deal with the information. So Psalms 81 is referring to the Passover, not the new moon. The first day of the month, the new moon or the first day of the month. And it says the Passover was on a full moon. Now, so we've established that the new moon is not full. We see that the new moon comes in the middle of the month. We've seen just in I can just, like when people say the scriptures show you that it's a full moon at the new moon. No, it doesn't. You read a couple of scriptures and then you piece it together this way. I just showed you in the scriptures that the full moon is the middle of the month. The Bible shows you that the full moon is the middle of the month. Clear as day. You just got to do a little bit of studying, but clear as day. Now take us back to the PowerPoint. Let's get to what we here to talk about. Next one. This is where we at. So is it dark or is it a crescent moon? So back to my conversation with my brother. The brother said that I could see it being the crescent moon. I don't fight against it, but the information that I have sways me to keep it as the dark moon. I'm not going to fight that. I just simply ask, and I've asked a couple of brothers, I just want brothers to show me, because if you can show me the information, we can have a conversation and figure it out. You feel me? Like, that's my biggest thing. Let's figure it out, because I say this all the time. I don't care who is right. I only care about what is right. Let's sit down and break bread. Let's sit down and talk about it. But this is the information that I personally have concerning the new moon. Take us to the next slide. Here's a man known as Philo of Alexandria, or Philo Judaeus. He was a Greek-speaking Jew, the most important representative of Hellenistic Judaism. So when the Jews were going through the Hellenization period, his writings provide the clearest view of the development of Jewry or Judaism in the diaspora. The note at the bottom: Philo lived during the time of Christ and lived after Christ was crucified. Philo was there with Christ. So Philo seen what the Jews was doing, the good and the bad. Let's see what Philo says. Next slide. Philo's of Alexandria's quote: "The first matter to be considered is that of festivals. Now there are 10 festivals in number, as the law sets them down." Now, to be fair, some of these are from the oral traditions as well, but the new moon is not. But some of the festivals that he referred to was of oral traditions as well. That was from Pharisaic Judaism. So I will put that out there. But again, we're going to corroborate this with the scriptures and show you that what he's saying is exactly what Christ was following too. So we'll get to that as well. It says the third is that which comes after the conjunction. What is the conjunction? The conjunction is what people refer to as the dark new moon or the astronomical new moon. The conjunction is when the moon sits directly between the earth and the sun, giving no visible light. When the moon cannot be seen whatsoever. That is the dark moon that people refer to as the new moon. That is the conjunction. So he's saying this third festival is the festival that comes after the conjunction, which happens on the day of the new moon in each month. So it said that this festival happens the day after the conjunction. The name of this festival is the new moon. So the new moon comes the day after the conjunction. The new moon comes the day after the dark moon. That is called the first crescent. But we're going to get more proof on that. Next slide. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia. Can you hear that? Okay. The Jewish Encyclopedia. Okay. Of the greatest significance, however, is the what? The proclamation of the new moon. Meaning you have to proclaim that you saw it. We're going to read on and prove it. By the president of the Sanhedrin. Now, excuse me, I don't think I'll put the information of the Sanhedrin in here, but the Sanhedrin were comprised of, at one point, Pharisees, at one point, Sadducees, and majority of the time, a mixture of the both of them. The Sadducees and the Pharisees were what was called the council or the Sanhedrin, right? That's very important to remember. So keep that on your mind. It said the new moon had to be proclaimed by the president of the Sanhedrin, which were Pharisees and Sadducees. Just remember that. Originally, of course, it was by the high priest. Just as in Rome, the Pontifex Maximus fixed new moons by proclamation. This is where the monthly calendar came from. The Sanhedrin was assembled in the courtyard of Jerusalem on the 30th day of each month from the morning to the evening, waiting for the reports of those appointed to observe the new moon. You had to see the new moon. So the president of the Pharisees and the Sadducees council waited for the people that they set out everywhere. They set them out everywhere, and they said, you guys be sure to be on the lookout for the new moon, and when you see it, you come back to us and let us know. And after the examination of these reports, the president of the Sanhedrin, in the presence of at least 3 members, called out, the new moon is consecrated, whereupon the whole assembly of the people repeated, it is consecrated. So the new moon is seen. They come and tell the Sanhedrin, which is the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Then they proclaim, we seen it. Next slide. This is from Encyclopedia Judaica. Now, this information is very peculiar because you can't find this. This was from the volume 12. I cannot seem to find a volume 12 anymore. The earliest that they have now is volume 13. But I have 2 more sources in here that quote this particular source. That is the wisdomlibrary.org. We see down here the reference. Oh, you don't have the laser on it, huh? Go to the next slide real quick. Down there at the bottom where it's highlighted, Encyclopedia Judaica, volume 12. Then go to the next slide. This is another site of an individual. This is an actual ministry in South Africa. Some Jews out in South Africa. And you see it right in the middle, or like the lower middle. They quoted Encyclopedia Judaica, volume 12 as well. So we can't find volume 12 no more. Volume 13 doesn't have this information, but 12 does. Go back up to go up 2 real quick. Go back up. Yeah, right there. Encyclopedia Judaica. This is what it states. Historically, the new moon spotters in Israel watch for the thin crescent to establish the beginning of each month. Historically speaking, that's what we did. Once seen, they reported their sighting to the calendar court, which is the Sanhedrin, authorities of the Sanhedrin. Note what one authority says. Originally, the new moon was not fixed by astronomical calculations, but solemnly proclaimed by witnesses who had testified to the reappearance of the crescent of the moon. Now, what that's saying is, now a lot of times the Jews calculate when the feast day is, and they just slap it on the calendar and say, okay, it's going to be on this day. Okay, it's going to be on this day. Okay, it's going to be on this day. But back then, they kept track of the days watching the moon. So they knew, okay, we're approaching the 30th day. Everybody go out to your respective areas and get to looking for the new moon. So it got to a time where they were doing solely witnesses. Then they went to a mixture of witnesses and calculation. Then they went over to just complete calculations, right? But we see here, Encyclopedia Judaica tells you, historically speaking, in the past, our forefathers would go out and look for it and then report it back to the Sanhedrin, which are who? The Pharisees and the Sadducees. That was the calendar court, the calendar council, right? Now, let's go down. 1, 2, 3. Let's go down 3. Encyclopedia.com. Let me see. Originally, the new moon was not fixed by astronomical calculations, but was solemnly proclaimed after the witness had testified to the reappearance of the Of the crescent of the moon. On the 30th of each month, the members of the high court assembled in the courtyard in Jerusalem named Beit Yazak, where they waited to receive the testimony of 2 reliable witnesses. Now, mind you, so 2 people had to see the crescent moon, and then they would come back to the council, and they'll say, I saw the new moon, whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. Now, what they used to do is they'd have one person outside. They'd ask this person, you saw the new moon? Yes. Where did you see it? Over on such and such. Okay, cool. You leave, next person come in. You saw the new moon? Yes. Where'd you see it? Over on such and such. Now, if the story was conflicting, then they'd be like, well, we don't know if y'all really saw it. So now we got to wait for somebody else to come and confirm it. But if they matched up, they're like, okay, they really saw it. Somebody saw the crescent moon, right? Let me see. If the moon crescent was not seen on the 30th day, the new moon was automatically celebrated on the 31st day. To inform the population of the beginning of the month, beacons were kindled on the Mount of Olives, and thence over the entire land and in parts of the diaspora. Later, however, the Samaritans began to light misleading beacons, and the high court dispatched messengers to far removed communities. Those Jews who lived in great distances from Jerusalem always celebrated the 30th day of the month as the new moon. Now, what it's saying is, one of the things that we used to do, once it was established that somebody saw the new moon, they would tell people, go to the top of the mountain and set the mountain on fire. So the people who were far away could see that mountain was on fire, and they're like, oh, snap, somebody saw the new moon, let's bring it in together. That's what they were doing. It wasn't, oh, you kept the new moon on this day, I kept the new moon on that day, he kept it. No. They said, we saw it, you go to the Mount of Olives, set it on fire. You go over here, set it on fire. You send the message over there, so make sure that they can see so they know the new moon is tonight. But then it got to a point where you had the Samaritans, which were not our people, because our people had already left the northern kingdom, those heathens. They started lighting misleading beacons. So we didn't see the new moon, but they said, oh, we're going to go up to the top now that we know that they do that. We're going to set it on fire so they can worship on the wrong day. Just some devils. So then we got to a space where they stopped doing it, and people said, all right, we're just going to do it on the 30th day if we don't see it. That's just what it is. But originally we went and we looked for the crescent moon. Next slide. I have to give you this before I give you the next source. The Karaites. The Karaite Judaism, or Karaism, also spelled Karaite or Karaism, is a quote-unquote Jewish religious movement characterized by the recognition of Tanakh alone as the supreme authority of the halakha, right? Now, I'm going to summarize to you what a Karaite is. The Karaites were the individuals who wrote the Masoretic text. They wrote the Aleppo Codex and the Leningrad Codex. The Karaites were the less favored of the Israelite sects, the Israelite groups, because they didn't believe in oral tradition. They said, we only adhere to Torah and Tanakh. We don't care about the Talmud. We don't care about Midrash. We don't care about none of that. We only care about what the Torah says. And we don't believe that you guys have this quote-unquote divine understanding of it, and the Talmud is the perfect explanation of the Torah. No, we don't believe that. We believe we read the Torah and we can understand it that way. That's who the Karaites were. The Karaites were so, even though they were, looked down upon, people didn't mess with them because they didn't believe in the Talmud and everything else. They respected them enough to allow the Leningrad Codex and the Aleppo Codex to be the respected and referred and preferred translation into modern Hebrew, the Masoretic text. The Karaites wrote that, and the Jews still respect that to this day. So that should tell you something about the Karaites, right? Why are we talking about this? Next slide. KaraiteCorner.org. Chodesh is derived from the root Chadasha, meaning new or to make new. The crescent new moon is called Chodesh because it is the first time the moon is seen anew after being concealed for several days at the end of the lunar cycle. At the end of the lunar month, the moon is close to the sun and eventually reaches the point of conjunction. Now remember, conjunction is when the moon is directly in front of the sun, between the sun and the earth. That's what conjunction is. When it passes between the sun and the earth. As a result, around the time of conjunction, very little of the moon's illuminated surface faces the earth. So what it's saying is the moon will be lit, but on the backside, because the sun is behind the moon, and the moon gets its light from the sun. Some people don't believe that, but I mean, science proves that. So what it's saying is, since it's directly between, the sun is beaming on the back of the moon, so the only part illuminated and lit up is the back of the moon. So from the earth's point of view, because we're on the other side, we don't see nothing. That's what it's telling us right now. It is not visible through the infinitely brighter glare of the sun. After the moon moves past the sun, it continues toward the opposite side of the earth and gets farther away from the sun. The percentage of its illuminated surface facing the earth increases, and one evening shortly after sunset, the moon is seen anew. So the very next day, at even, we then see the crescent. So you get the conjunction, then the next day you have the crescent moon, right? Crescent new moon versus astronomical new moon. Many people have been led astray by the inaccurate use in modern language of the term new moon. Modern astronomers adopted this otherwise unused term, which had always referred to the first visible sliver, and now they use it to refer to the conjunction, when the moon passes between the earth and the sun, which time it is not visible. The astronomers soon realized that the inaccurate use of new moon to refer to the conjunction will lead to confusion. So to be more accurate, scientists now distinguish the astronomical new moon and the crescent new moon. So they knew that that was misleading, so they switched up the name to astronomical new moon or dark moon. Because originally, new moon meant the crescent. Next slide. And we still won't get to the Bible. Don't worry about that. Next slide. Oxford English Dictionary. The original meaning of the term new moon, which is still sometimes used in astronomical context, Salakia, is the first visible crescent of the moon after conjunction with the sun. So the original meaning of the term was the first visible crescent after conjunction. Now, sometimes in non-astronomical contexts, they still refer to it in this fashion. It's only in astronomy that they call the new moon, and they call it the astronomical new moon, and it's considered dark. Next slide. Without a telescope, it is impossible to see a dark moon. How would our forefathers spot the new moon with no telescope in that time? While there is evidence that principles of the telescopes were known in the late 1500s, which is the 16th century, the first telescope was created in the Netherlands in 1608. Spectacle makers Hans Lippershey and Zacharias Janssen and Jacob Matthias independently created telescopes. Did they have binoculars back in our time? Maybe, possibly, but I tried to dig and find any proof that they had telescopes and stuff. I didn't find anything specifically in that far back in ancient times. Didn't find anything, right? So if we didn't have telescopes, how we see the dark moon? And the Sanhedrin wasn't looking like that. They were standing outside looking for it with their bare eyes. So how did you see the dark moon? Watch this. Next slide. People who claim to see the dark new moon are lying. Brothers and sisters, don't get mad at me. I hope y'all don't get mad at me. But it's true. You're not telling the truth. If you say you spotted the dark moon, but I was outside and it was pitch black at night and I saw the dark moon, you're lying. You've maybe tricked yourself into believing that you saw it, but that's a lie. And I'm going to show you why that's a lie. And this is not an opinion, this is a fact. Because the moon goes through the same cycle every month. And I'm going to show you something about that cycle. When will the moon rise tonight? Calculate the moon rise. So you will know when the moon rises and the moon sets. This is how it works. When will the moon rise tonight? To determine the moon rise time for each day of the month, add 50 minutes is really about 35 to 45 minutes, honestly. But especially when we get closer to the winter, the times get a little closer. But this is talking about like around the summer. Add 50 minutes for each day after a phase, or subtract 50 minutes for each day before a new phase. Why is that important? Because what it's saying is when you look at the new moon, to determine when the new moon is going to set, you have to add 50 minutes or subtract 50 minutes each day. What does that mean? So during the dark moon, the sun will set, and literally around the same exact time the moon is setting. So when it's pitch black, there's no way you saw a shadow of a dark moon. There's no way. It goes down with the sun. The next day, you add about 50 minutes. So the sun will set, and then you'll see the moon setting about 40 to 50 minutes later. That's how we can catch it, because there's a small window of about 40 minutes where the crescent moon peeks his head out, and then we can find it before it sets. Watch this. Next slide. This is time and date. There's a reason why I pulled these up. So this is for November of 2023. Sunrise at 6:28 on November 12th. Sun sets at 4:51 p.m. on November 12th. Moonrise on that same day, 5:41. So the moon rose an hour or almost an hour earlier, about 40 minutes earlier than the sun. The moon set. So the sun sets at 4:51. The moon sets, meaning it goes below the horizon, at 4:24. Now, this is the day where most people are keeping their new moon, November 13th. November 13th is when most people are keeping their dark new moon, right? 6:23 is when the sun rises. 6:46 is when the moon rises. So it rises right after. 4:50, the sun sets. Now, mind you, you still got that glow from the sun. So it's still bright in the sky, but the sun has set below the horizon. You ain't going to be able to see the moon with that glow because the light is outshining the moon. But watch this. 4:50, the sun sets. 4:59, the moon sets. There's no way you saw the dark moon. 9 minutes later, the moon was below the horizon. But if you add another day, November 14th, the sun rose, and you can go on time and date and look at this yourself. The sun set around, I think, 4:50, 4:55, almost 5 o'clock. But the moon set at like 5:40 on the 14th. So we had that small window of about 40 to 45 minutes to see the crescent before it went below the horizon. Watch this. I did another one because just to show you it wasn't a one-time phenomenon. Next slide. This is December of this year. December 12th, 6:49 a.m., sun rises. 4:44, sun sets. December 12th, 6:44, which is 4 minutes earlier. This is about day 30 for most brothers who keep the dark moon. 6:44, the moon rises. 4:24, the moon sets. December 13th is when most brothers are going to keep their new moon. 7:51, the moon rises. 6:49, the sun rises. I'm sorry. I did that backwards. That would be our new moon because I'm looking at the illumination. It'll be visible. Salakia. So on the 12th is when most brothers will be keeping their new moon. My bad. 4:44, the sun is setting. 4:24, the moon is setting. The moon is already down before the sun sets. You won't be able to see a dark moon or spot the dark moon. Why does that matter? Because the Sanhedrin in the time of Christ, they said they had to see the moon. We had to see it before we could proclaim it and call it a new moon. How are y'all spotting it? What are you looking at, or what are you looking for? Right? Next one. I went into 2025 from August. Just to show you that it don't matter where you do it, it's the same thing. So August 22nd and 23rd is day 29 and day 30 and what? Let me word this properly. For those that keep the dark moon, the 22nd will more than likely be your 30th day. The 23rd will be your first day, right? 6:19, sunrise. 7:30, sun sets. 5:30, moon rose. This is their day 30. 7:28 rather, the sun has gone below the horizon. You would not see that. Okay, so this would be day one for those who keep the dark moon. August 23rd. 6:20 a.m., the sun rises. 7:29, the sun sets. 6:42, the moon would rise. And like I said, in the summer, it changes a little bit. 7:56, which is about 25 minutes, the moon will set. So you got a 25-minute window. Anyone that pays attention to the moon cycles, I know brothers here do, anyone that pays attention to the moon cycles will know in this particular time, the moon will be very low, hanging out toward the bottom of the horizon for those 10, 15, 20 minutes. Also, the sun has just set, but the sky is still very bright. So you will not be able to spot the dark moon. But the next day you will. You'll be able to spot the crescent moon. All of that to say, when we're saying I could spot the dark moon, that's not true. And if you can't spot the moon, how could you proclaim the moon? Because our forefathers were spotting these particular moons. Go to the next slide. In summary, the dark new moon sets at the same time or before the sun sets. It is important to know this because what would the Sanhedrin be looking out for if they could never spot a dark, quote unquote, new moon? There would be nothing for the Sanhedrin to be looking out for. This means they could not have been outside looking for a dark moon, but rather a crescent. The crescent moon shows itself approximately 20 to 30 minutes before sunset. This is when the sun is in twilight and the sky is a little darker, so the small light of the moon is actually visible. This is why there were a number of men outside looking for the moon. You don't have a large window to spot the moon, and sometimes it's hard to see. More eyes makes it easier to locate. So the proof, the references, the resources all point toward a crescent new moon as far as our forefathers are concerned. Now, some people may argue, well, that was the time of the Romans. That was the time of the Greeks. Okay, well, if you can show me something in the time of the Babylonians, if you can show me something in the time of the Assyrians, if you can show me something in the time of the the Egyptians or the Exodus, period. Then we got a conversation. But it's not even the fact that it's in the time of the Romans. It's the fact that it was in the time of Yahushua himself. That's the only reason why I hold to a lot of this information, because Christ was here in this particular time. If this was wrong, Christ would have said something about it. Well, he did say something. He said the Pharisees do da-da-da-da-da. Okay, watch this. Go to Matthew chapter 23. You can bring it back to us, Hot. Matthew chapter 23. Let's read 2 and 3.
This is the book of Matthew, chapter 23, verse 2, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat.
The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. They also sit on the Sanhedrin panel. Come on.
All, therefore, whatsoever they bid you, observe.
Everything they tell you to do, make sure you observe it. Everything that they're reading to you and they tell you this is when we keep in the feast days, how we keep in the feast days, so on and so forth. You listen to that because they know the law. They sitting in Moses' seat. But what?
That observe and do, but do not ye after their works.
Why?
For they say and do not.
So they gonna tell you what's right, but they don't usually do what's right. They got their own traditions. They hypocrites. They adding to the law, all of that good stuff. But what they teaching you do that. They taught you what the Passover was, you do that. They taught you what the new moon was, you do that. They taught you to wear your fringes, you do that. They taught you to at the time go and sacrifice, you do that. Listen to what they teaching you, because they know the law. The Sanhedrin was comprised of Pharisees and Sadducees, and they agreed we got to wait for somebody to see the crescent moon. Now I'm going to show you why that's important. Go to Matthew chapter 26. This is where it get cold. Matthew chapter 26. So, Sanhedrin is the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Right?
God.
Pharisees and the Sadducees kept a crescent moon. This is why I even considered following it. Let's read 26. We're going to read 1 through 5.
This is the book of Matthew, chapter 26, verse 1. And it came to pass, when Yahushua had finished all these sayings, he said unto his disciples, ye know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover.
So they know that the Passover is coming up, right? Read.
And the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified.
Come on.
Then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people unto the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and consulted that they may take Yahushua by subtlety and kill him.
Come on.
But they said, not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar among the people.
So Christ just said, we know the Passover's coming up and I'm about to be crucified. While he's having his situation, the Pharisees having their situation. Hey, we're going to take Christ, but we can't do it on Passover. So we got to figure something out. We ain't going to be able to do it on the Passover. Christ is letting them know in 2 days we keeping the Passover, and in 2 days I'm going to be betrayed. Now he's going to keep the Passover, and the next day he gets crucified. They said, well, we can't do it on the feast day. We can't do it on the Passover because the people are going to lose their mind. Right? Was that to 5? That was verse 5. Drop down to verse 17.
Verse 17. Now the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Yahushua, saying unto him, where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Passover?
Come on.
And he said, go into the city to such a man, and say unto him, the master saith, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Yahushua had appointed them. And they made ready the Passover. Now when the even was come, he sat down with the 12.
Right. So, remember, he said, we about to have a Passover. The Pharisees also said, we about to have the Passover. Christ is now about to keep the Passover. The sun's going down. He's about to keep the Passover. They captured him on the night of the Passover, and they crucified him after the Passover before the sun set, right? Here's a question. Because that was keeping the Passover too. If they were keeping the Passover the same time Christ was keeping the Passover, that means their 14th day at even was the same day as Christ's 14th day at even. In order for that to be possible, they had to have had the same count from the new moon. If the Pharisees and Sadducees kept a crescent new moon and had a Passover on the same day as Christ, that would mean that Christ had to have started that count from the same day as the Pharisees and the Sadducees. So that means Christ would have had to kept a crescent new moon. So if that be the case, why wouldn't I do that? Yahushua kept the Passover the same time as the Pharisees and the Sadducees, which means that his count started from when their count started. We know that the Pharisees and the Sadducees kept the new moon as a crescent moon, so Christ by default would have had to kept the crescent moon as the new moon. Had to. So I've shown you in the scriptures. I've given you, how many references did we just go through? I done stacked up the references just for y'all. We even did some calculations. We talked about, I gave y'all some understanding on when the moon rises and the moon sets. I mean, the information is here. And like I said, we sat back and we tried to find dark moon proof. We did, but we couldn't find it. So my thing is this: we ought to obey God rather than men. This is how our forefathers was doing it. Yahushua did it this way. So I don't want to, no disrespect, but I don't see any information from any other time where they was keeping it any different way. And my biggest thing, Yahushua was keeping the feast days the same as the Pharisees and Sadducees. That tells you that he had the same count as them, which means he had to have had the same new moon as them. And the Sanhedrin, which is the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they kept a crescent new moon. So Christ had to have kept a crescent new moon. That's it. That's it. That makes sense. Am I? Does that like computer? Am I confusing anybody? I just want to make sure I'm not confusing nobody. The proof and the references are there. And the thing is because a lot of people won't do their due diligence. A lot of people won't do the research. They just go off of what, like, I went off of that for 6 years just because that's what they taught me. Oh, because a lot of times, and again, this is no shade at no brothers, but this is the reason that I've heard, I think, 6 different times. The brothers that used to, the individuals that used to lead the congregation here, they taught us this way. A few brothers that I've reached out to, they said the same thing. Well, the Lord said everything starts in darkness. I mean, he didn't say that, but I understand they're saying the concept of, like, even the creation, everything was dark. Birth, everything's dark. I'm missing something. There's one more thing. The day begins at dark, so why would not the moon? I'm like, okay, that's fine. I get how you like reason through it, but where's the proof? I just gave you, I proved to you how it couldn't be the full moon. I proved to you how it's very possible for it to be the crescent moon. Because even now, I don't want to be too bold as to say it's absolutely emphatically right, but I will say this: Yahushua did it. That's got to count for something. For those that believe in Hamashiach Yahushua, that got to count for something. Christ kept the feast day the same time as the Pharisees and the Sadducees, so that means he had the same count, which means he had to have started the same new moon. I know he said ain't no greater prophet than John the Baptist, but we talking about Yahushua, bro. We talking about Christ. I'm going to go with what Christ was doing. 12 times out of 10. I'm going with what Christ was doing. So, I hope it was edifying. I hope nobody took offense. I hope the individuals that watch the lesson really sit down to hear what it is that's being said in this lesson. And it's crazy because I was watching it as we were teaching. This is actually one of the lower view lessons. And here's the crazy part. When I talk about this particular topic, a lot of people, instead of saying, let me listen, oh, here he go. Bro, this is your salvation. This is obedience to the Lord. Like a lot of times we look at it like, I don't feel like hearing it. Not, is it important that I hear it? Is it important that I look into this? What is the importance? If your first day is off, all your other days are off. We got to think about that. Well, right. People will read that and be like, time appointed. Oh, that's talking about on the new moon. No, it's not. No, it's not. Why did the translators decide to phrase it that way? I don't know. But if we're going to translate it accurately, technically it's not inaccurate. But if we're going to translate it in a fashion where we can understand it, it's saying boom, 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 boom. Let's deal with let's not be in our feelings. Let's not be like, oh, he just trying to debunk this or do that. No. Really think about it and say, you know what? Are his points valid? Is his information accurate? And if it is, just give it a look. Just give it a look. That's all I'm saying. Just give it a look. So I pray to the Most High that this was edifying. I hope brothers got some understanding as to why we keep the new moon, what the new moon represents, how we keep the new moon, and when it actually is. Is it a dark moon, full moon, or crescent moon? I hope that the information and the proof was set out. We've had a number of brothers, unfortunately, that have never taught about the new moon, that ever since we switched over, they've had made a number of videos specifically throwing shade at us for teaching this particular doctrine. It is what it is. The proof is here. You can try to philosophize and reason your way out of it all you want, but the proof is right here in your face. We give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High for allowing us to see it and for allowing us to be humble enough to say, you know what, we can't prove this, so we have to go with this. It is what it is. Lord willing, there was some edification. I pray that there was some understanding given. I hope it wasn't confusing. I hope it wasn't too difficult or anything like that. I try to keep it simple. Sometimes I get on a roll and I'll start to come up here. I may even get a little sidetracked, but I'll always get sidetracked to bring you an extra point to the actual point. I hope it wasn't too much going on where people wasn't getting edified. I pray to the Most High that was edifying. I pray to the Most High that people gained understanding as to why we do it, how we do it. And I hope for those that maybe didn't follow the crescent moon that you guys go and do your due diligence on the dark moon and the full moon and the crescent moon and see which one reigns supreme, for lack of better words. We give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Mashiach Yahushai. Call Allah Yahweh Ba'ashem Mashiach Yahushai. Make sure y'all tune into our classes. We got that daily bread. Every first Monday is Q&A. Every second and fourth Monday is Los Discípulos de las Palabras, which is our Spanish class. Every Wednesday, World History According to the Bible. Every Tuesday, Bible Basics. Every second and fourth Thursday, we got, what's that joint called? Stick to the Script. Salakia. Stick to the Script. Friday, we got a lineup. Apostle Yashimai, he's the Blue Strip at 5 p.m. Room 144, 7:30 p.m. My class, Sound Doctrine, at 9:45 p.m. We got started a little late. We're going to blame Ashna Posh again. Just throw that out there. It was his fault. We got started a little late, but all praise to the Most High. We got it in. And then on Saturdays, we got War for the Kingdom with Bishop Yazaquel. And then we have followed by Bishop Tazayuan's Feed the Sheep. Y'all make sure y'all tune into these classes. We giving out daily bread. we focus a lot on the spirit, a lot on the character. Sometimes we get into doctrine, sometimes we get into prophecy, but understand that whatever we give you is going to be thorough, and you're going to understand it at the end of the day. We're trying to save souls and feed the sheep. So make sure y'all sharing the product. Make sure y'all sharing the content. Make sure y'all sharing the videos, and make sure y'all watching them to edify your own spirit. So with that, Brother Darash, my brother Yahawadah, we say shalom. We signing out. Lord willing, we catch y'all tomorrow, Israel.